Hello, everyone. I'm Rick. I'm your host. This is 90 to Zambo Talks, Bedtime Stories. So sit back and relax, and I'm going to tell you some stories. Basically, we're doing these bedtime stories because this will tell you what it really took to make happen the clandestine importation of nearly 30 tons of marijuana between 1969 and 1981. So if you remember, in episode 2, which was a continuation of episode 1, we completed our smuggle, made it back to Stockton, only to find that the load was covered with a Coca-Cola sticky substance, and it contained mostly seeds and stems, although there were some tops, and we did clean the load. So now, looking forward to the future, the first order of business was to report back to Willie what was going on, what happened, and and to tell him, that the quality was so bad and it took so long to sell, and we had to, if we wanted to do this again, we definitely had to fix some things. We had to get better quality. So that entailed notifying the contact, Jesse, in advance that he was going to have to go south to score better weed. Down in Culiacan, which is about 500 miles south, there was better quality than right there at the border in Nogales. So during the next 5 months, or between November and March, Willie and I made 5 more runs. Each one was a little bolder than the last, and each one got crazier and crazier. So we did get better weed, and we also had more equipment. We had custom-made backpacks. We had a compass. We had military flashlights. We had steel-toed boots. We had canteens. We were definitely much more prepared than we had been previously. So Willie had the bright idea. It actually wasn't his idea. It was the idea of the guys who turned us on to the smuggling in the first place. But he had an idea to, instead of driving back to California, like our friends did, they flew their loads back to New York. Well, we figured we could do the same thing. So we went to Army Surplus and picked up 2 foot lockers from Army Surplus that we were going to pack the loads in. So we had 2 loads that we'd accumulated, about 160 pounds, which was going to fit into 2 foot lockers. So we put the kilos in the foot lockers, and then we proceeded to sprinkle baby powder all over it so the smell wouldn't be so bad. That's what our friends told us to do. We probably got carried away. Anyway, baby powder all over it. We arrived at Sky Harbor in Phoenix, checked the foot lockers with the curbside. Each foot locker weighed about 80 pounds, and the curbside attendant picked up the 2 foot lockers. I think I tipped him very generously, gave him $20. So he checked our foot lockers, and we flew to San Francisco. When we arrived in San Francisco and went down to the baggage, waiting on the carousel, up came the first foot locker. It comes up the carousel and down the little ramp to hit the rubber bumper at the bottom of the carousel and then continue on. Well, when it hit that bumper, the baby powder inside just exploded out of the seams of the foot locker. And we had to pick up this foot locker, now covered with baby powder. It was like we were carrying this thing. We were covered with baby powder as well. And we were like whiteface, carting this thing out to the curb. Now we had to go back and get the other one. I mean, this was a fiasco at the baggage claim right there. I don't know where the cops were, but they weren't around. Anyway, we got them both out to the curb. Now I had to go back and rent a car. Lo and behold, the only rental car available was a Toyota Corolla, which was way too small to put the 2 foot lockers in. So 1 foot locker had to go in the trunk, and the trunk wouldn't even close. We had to strap the trunk down with Willie's belt. The other foot locker had to go in the back seat, which caused the Willie's seat to be jammed forward, and I mean, Willie was scrunched in there. Anyway, that was a fiasco in itself, and we made it back and sold the loads. We had done a couple more loads, and we figured the next time I took the opportunity to drive my parents' brand new Thunderbird down to do our next scam. The car probably had 200 miles on it. It was brand new. It was my dad's brand new Thunderbird. So I drove it down there, and this was the car we were going to use to go in to Mexico and park at the hospital. Go in, come out, put the load in the trunk, and go home. Well, when we went in to Mexico to meet with our contact, on the way out, we got hassled at the border. The customs guy hassled us and took the license number, took our information down, and we felt this was just going to be really scary. Between the border station and the hospital, I think I finally convinced Willie that we should just do a dry run. Tell Jesse, our contact, that we couldn't do it. Things just weren't right at the border, and we would come back another night. So we went in and we told him that, and then we came back out. And this is what happened when we came out. I'd like to read to you. So, when we finally arrived back at the hospital parking lot, and excited as usual, turning right and heading towards the main highway, we noticed a pair of headlights in the rearview mirror. It appeared as if someone was following us. This had never happened before, as we had always been on this road alone late at night. Never any other vehicles in either direction. Then a second set of headlights appeared, and a third set. About a mile down the road, suddenly 4 more cars, tires screeching, came tearing out of 2 dirt roads which intersected the road we were on and blocked our exit onto the main highway leading back to Tucson and Phoenix. Red and blue lights were now flashing from the roof bars atop the police cars which surrounded us. Angry-looking men in military camo outfits and police tactical gear jumped out of the cars and approached us with handguns drawn. There were snickering sounds coming from some of the other military-clad soldiers in the attack group as slides racked shells into shotguns. Bright lights were trained on us, directly pointing into our eyes, blinding us from seeing exactly what was going on. From beyond the lights in the darkness boomed an authoritarian voice. "Get out of the car now. Put your hands on top of the car where I can see them and freeze, motherfuckers." My heart thumped like a pneumatic ram trying to pound its way out of my chest. Kabam, kabam, kabam. I knew it, I thought. "What seems to be the problem here, officer?" lamely answered Willie, trying hard to stop the uncontrollable shaking in his legs. He knew there was not a thing the cops could do. He and I were clean, squeaky clean. The camo-clad man grabbed Willie's outstretched hands and spun him around so they faced each other. "Let's see some ID, boys, and where's the vehicle registration? Like, now." "What the fuck are you 2 yo-yos doing out in the middle of the night?" barked a crew-cut military-looking man suddenly appearing out of the darkness wearing a blue jacket with a U.S. Customs insignia emblazed on the back. "We were down in Nogales visiting some ladies and having a few beers. We had car trouble and then we got lost, and now this. What's going on?" snapped Willie dizzily off the top of his head. "What's going on here anyway?" I repeated. "Have we done anything wrong?" "You shut up, boy," drawled the angry-looking agent. "I'll ask the questions around here." Customs agents, local police officers, and what appeared to be some federal agents clad in camo outfits, appearing as if they just emerged from the jungles of Vietnam, swarmed around us in the car like a cloud of angry bees. They searched the car thoroughly, opening the hood, checking the engine, looking under the seats, in the trunk, and all over the vehicle. All they could find were the empty backpacks, 3 empty duffel bags, one stuffed inside of the other, and an ice chest filled with ice and 2 6-packs of Budweisers. Another agent overturned the ice chest, spilling ice all over the trunk. The man pulled two cans of beer free from the 6-pack, held together with a plastic yoke, which held each can in the 6-pack configuration, and shook them to see if they were actually beer and not some ingenious concealed stash. He then popped the tabs like hand grenade pins, and the beer squirted and foamed out in a spray, showering the agent and Willie standing next to him. "What the fuck?" the agent screamed as he threw half-empty cans at my feet. He was soaked, with beer dripping from his face and onto his camo shirt. "What the hell are these?" the now exasperated and angry customs man asked, holding up the backpacks and the empty duffel bags in the glare of the headlights. "Just our camping gear," Willie answered, wiping his face with the front of his dirty t-shirt, which he pulled up, exposing his rail-thin stomach. "We went camping a few days ago and left our stuff in the trunk. Anything wrong with that, officer?" "Just get the fuck out of here," the officer yelled, throwing the packs and bags into the ice-strewn trunk with disgust. He returned our driver's license and car registrations after writing down the information. It was the only thing he could do. So, the problem there was now the hospital run was too hot, and our cars and our IDs were now known. So we looked to see if we could find somebody else to do the run. We still had the load waiting for us with Jesse in Mexico. So our friends who originally turned us on to everything, turned us on to the whole trip, said they knew a guy who might be able to help us out. His name was George. So we contacted George, and he indeed said that he could help us out. So what happened next? I'd like to read to you. This was a couple days later. We finally got George, and he agreed to help us out, take his vehicle down there and do the run for us. George picked us up at JP's Tempe duplex in his battered white GMC van early the next evening before sunset. The van looked like it had been used in a demolition derby, with dents everywhere, the front bumper missing and the rear doors bent inwards, which were tied together with what appeared to be an old frayed water ski pull rope to hold them closed. We piled into the back seat of the van as the front passenger seat had been removed and replaced with a bag of George's tools. Near the border, we drove down the dirt road, passing the adjacent to the hospital, to the road's terminus at an abandoned quarry. Willie scanned the abandoned quarry with his binoculars. There were no other cars in sight. The only things moving were a few vultures circling, riding the hot desert evening updrafts. "Did you guys bring a heater?" George asked after we left the quarry, still on the dirt road which paralleled the main road where the hospital was. "Why would we bring a heater? It's probably still over 100 degrees outside, and it's only 7:45, I said, confused, glancing at my watch. No, not that kind of heater. A heater is a gun. What are you guys, a couple of amateurs?" "No, we didn't bring a gun," Willie said. I started to get a nervous, queasy feeling in my stomach. As we continued down the lonely, bumpy dirt road, the same road the cops used as they descended literally out of nowhere upon us a couple of nights before, George swerved the van into a clump of bushes lying on the side of the road. Dust was flying as the van came to a sudden stop at the edge of the road. George set the parking brake. "What the fuck?" I exclaimed. "Damn it, the engine's overheating." "Say, will one of you guys hand me that water bag in the back?" George asked. Willie passed him the burlap water bag. George put on his windbreaker, which was thrown over the tool bag, and got out, walked around the front of the van, and pulled up the hood. The desert was still quiet. The only sound was George rattling around under the hood. He set the water bag down and withdrew a snub-nosed .38 caliber revolver he wore in a holster tucked into the small of his back, which was hidden by the windbreaker. Keeping the pistol at his side, George walked around the van and opened the sliding door with his free hand, and in one quick motion, swung the pistol up, stopping 3 inches from Willie's astonished face. Willie's open mouth moved up and shut like a fish struggling out of water to breathe. I was speechless. "Now this is a heater," said George with a tone of finality, gesturing with the revolver. "Let's have the money, boys." I pulled up my shirt, unfastened a money belt I wore around my waist. I unzipped the canvas belt and, with shaking hands, gave George 3 banded wads of $100 bills, which was our buy money. All I could see was the revolver's small dark hole and George's silhouette. Willie's mouth was still opening and closing, his lips making silent little O's. "Let me give you fools some advice, since you just paid for it," George continued as he stuffed the bills into his pocket. You are both a couple of stupid, real lame dicks. I don't know how you ever got this far without getting busted or shot dead. In this business, never trust anybody, not a fucking soul. Now get out of the van and start walking." We grabbed our backpacks and exited the van as George, still pointing his revolver in our direction, got back into the driver's seat and took off in a cloud of dust, leaving us dumbfounded on the side of the dirt road. We then walked the 3 miles into Nogales, Arizona. Since George had not asked for our wallets, fortunately we had enough money to catch a bus back to Phoenix. We sat in the back of the darkened coach, passing a bottle of tequila back and forth, quiet for a long time, each of us lost in our own thoughts. There were no recriminations, no shouting, no friendly banter. The game had suddenly turned deadly serious, and this was beginning to sink in. No one ever heard from George again. Not our friends, nobody. He just disappeared like a shadow in the dust. Much later, as a matter of fact, after writing this book, I found out that George and his cohort bag of thug rip-off artists ripped off many would-be college smugglers at both Arizona State in Tempe and in University of Arizona down in Tucson. I also heard through the grapevine that these guys regularly beat up the would-be smugglers, and in 2 instances I heard that people went down, the college smugglers went down and were never heard from again. We were definitely very lucky, but something had to change. The old hospital route was dead. It was too easy and too hot. If we were ever going to do this again, we had to reconnoiter and find a new route. So that's the end of episode 3. I hope you enjoyed that, and stay tuned. We'll get into more of this, and you'll find out more things that went on. So stay tuned. I'm Rick. This is 90 to Zambo Talks, Bedtime Stories. This is the book, 90 Degrees to Zamboanga, that I wrote. Memoirs of a 20-year marijuana smuggling adventure. It's available on in both Kindle and paperback on Amazon. So check it out. Check out the website, 90tozambo.com, and stay tuned. We'll see you on the flip side. Cheerio.